slowly started trekking the volcano slowly. The surface is so hot that the sweat itself is vaporizing into thin air as soon as it came out of the pores. But Sam kept on going. Because the higher he got the more crows he saw near the volcano, this only made him believe that there is something really wrong. Because no normal crow can survive near a volcano, much less flying towards the mouth of the volcano. Then if these crows are not ordinary, then should be magical beasts. And if a whole flock of these crows are there together and nobody in the village has never paid any attention to it, that is something unnatural. That is the reason Sam is trying to find out. Sam finally entered the smog that covered the mouth of the volcano. When he entered the smog, his didn't blur, on the contrary, what he saw made him almost lose his grip. The volcano mouth is not as near as he expected. It is still far away, and what made him even more shocked is the mountain from now on doesn't have any slope. It is almost like a straight wall. Sam took a deep breath and continued his hike. But after some time he can't bear the temperature. His body is tempered by cultivating the myriad beast bloodline technique in order to bear the pressure from the bloodline from the beasts, but he still can't continue. So, he finally gritted his teeth and subconsciously started the cultivation technique. Suddenly he felt that the temperature around him has elevated a lot. Realizing this, Sam saw hope and again continued his journey. But after another 100 meters of climbing, he started feeling immense pressure bearing down up on him, and again his journey slowed down. But Sam didn't stop. He cultivated furiously and carried on. Finally, almost when it is noon, Sam reached top. On the top there were hundreds of crows. All the crows are as Sam expected, level 1 beasts. Their eyes are fiery red and their feathers are just like normal crow feathers, but their color is a bit different as they had a reddish hue for them on their black color. Sam finally realized what these are. They are fire crows, but according to the knowledge he learned from the bestiary, they shouldn't be here. That is the reason Sam didn't even think in that direction. But reality proved him wrong. These beasts, which are higher grade species that are not supposed to exist in this mortal realm, are here. Sam finally understood one thing: he took the right path. He felt a bit excited and a rare smile appeared on his face as he slowly moved towards the edge of the mouth. But seen in front of him is not as he expected. There is an orb which is glowing with vigor like a brilliant sun is present in center of the lava pool. But another thing that surprised him is that the depth of the volcano. The depth inside the volcano is very small compared to outside. Sam almost climbed 4,000 meters, but inside the volcano the depth is only 500 meters. This contrast made him stupefied. If it isn't for the heat waves from the lava pool, I would have suspected it is an illusion. Sam thought as he leapt inside the mouth of the volcano and landed on the bank, which is very small that it could barely sufficient for a single person to stand. He took a deep breath that almost made his lungs get fried. He then observed the orb, which is in the size of an elephant. With that brilliance there seemed to be something that is sleeping. For visiting. While Sam is observing the orb, on his house the uninvited guests are discussing about him. "Brother, do we really need to stay here and take him with us? He doesn't seem to like us that much," Paul asked Philip. He is a bit afraid to be with Sam. "What do you think, Haley?" Philip asked Haley with a smile as if he didn't hear Paul at all. Right now, Haley is looking through all the papers in workroom where Sam usually makes the clothes. She stopped up on interruption and looked towards Philip. "I need to make a deal with him. Even if you guys leave, I am staying here," she replied with her indifferent tone. Both Marvin and Paul were puzzled. "What deal do you want to make?" Paul asked curiously, but all he got was a glare in reply. "Okay, Haley, cool down, all right. I know you want to ask him to make dresses for you. You don't have to make Paul nervous if you don't want to say it." Philip interrupted as he laughed. "Humph." All he got in reply is a snort as turned her gaze away towards the papers. "I don't think Sam is that much of an irritating person. I think he is just irritated about something, that is why he is behaving like that," Marvin said from the side. "I think so too. Let's wait, we don't have anything to do anyway," Philip said as he sat down and started cultivating. Meanwhile, Sam is still observing the orb. After observing for so long, he realized that there is a bird which seemed to be in a state of sleep. Sam just understood that his thinking is absolutely correct. So, he went through the myriad beast bloodline technique and revised how to make a contract. Then he started making various hand symbols while circulating his spiritual energy according to technique. Then a complex-looking rune emerged from his glabella. Suddenly the bird in the orb started giving off a reaction. Then the orb brightened and the very next second it dimmed. Then a majestic-looking bird appeared. And same complex rune appeared from the bird. And suddenly the blood came from bird and Sam at same time, which spread along the rune. Then the runes exchanged and merged into each other's body and disappeared. And a loud sound came from the bird. Cawww. All the fire crows prostrated as a sign of respect. Then the bird looked at Sam and it cawed again. Caw caw caw, but Sam heard another thing. Greetings, young master. This sound came in his mind, which made Sam dumbstruck. Greetings, young master. As soon as this voice was heard in his head, Sam became dumbstruck with shock. He looked at the massive bird in front of him. It is almost 4 times his current size. But Sam felt like this bird is still quite young. But that is not the main reason Sam felt such shock. The main reason is that the bird in front of him is the legendary, 3-legged golden sun crow, which he only read in the myths of his previous world. He saw this bird in the bestiary, but it said that the bird only exists in upper heavenly realms. But he is seeing one right in front of his eyes. Just as he was about to open his mouth, a bright light appeared from the golden sun crow, and then formed into projection of a man who is very familiar to Sam. He is none other than Ling Tian. Then Ling Tian spoke with a smile. Congratulations, Sam, you didn't disappoint me. In fact, you came earlier than expected. So, this golden sun crow is sent here by you? Sam asked as realization dawned onto him. Yes, he is one of the younger generations from the golden sun crow. It is the same age as you. Ling Tian replied. But if my first contract the golden sun crow tribe? The bird replied. Prince of the tribe? Sam asked in bewilderment. Yes, I came to this world on the arrangement of Master Ling Tian. The crow replied. What is your name? Sam asked. Yanwu, just call me Sam. Since our contract is based as equals, there should be no need for such honorifics and we are going to live a long time together. Sam replied. Thank you, Sam. By the way, congratulations on becoming an acolyte. Master Ling Tian has a present for you. Yanwu said, and he flapped his wings and absorbed all the lava inside the pool. There are a lot of spiritual stones in the bottom of the wide pool. As Sam watched the stones, his eyes sparkled. Because the stones are not white in color like normal spirit stones, rather, they are red in color. They are fire elemental spirit stones. These spirit stones are extremely valuable because they can increase the cultivation speed by many times. The market value for these stones is very high. 1 elemental stone is same as 5 normal stones. It may even increase depending on the location. And the pool, Sam can see at least thousands of them. Sam shifted his gaze towards Yanwu and asked slowly. How many are they? They are not that much. They are only around 10,000 stones. Yanwu replied. Sam can't see from his face or from the cawing of Yanwu. But he can sense that Yanwu is smiling. As Sam was still in his shock, Yanwu spoke again. Sam, this is the gift from my golden sun crow tribe. And Yanwu flapped its wings. After a small gust of extremely hot air, there flew hundreds of black feathers and landed in front of Sam. Sam caught one of them and examined them with a confused expression. Seeing that Yanwu let out a cheerful cawing, his eyes bright with smile, and said, inject your spiritual energy into them. Sam did as he was told and the feather became bright and golden color. Then Yanwu continued. These are the feathers of the elders and current king of my tribe. These feathers have high endurance and can be used for attack and defense if used properly. Since you have golden sun crow bloodline from our contract, you can also use them and you are also very compatible with them. Sam was shocked again. After some time he looked straight at Yanwu and said, thank you. Sam felt really grateful as these are really valuable treasures for anyone and even more valuable for the golden crows themselves. Even though he knew most of it was due to Ling Tian, he still felt grateful. Okay, Yanwu, I think you have already enough of this place. So, let us go outside. From now on we are partners. Let us reach the top of the world. Sam said with a rare smile on his face. Just when he was about to say something, he saw the feathers and the spirit stones and felt troubled. How should I take them out of this place? Sam thought. Feeling Sam's trouble, Yunwoo spoke. The dimension can be used for storage. There is basement under the tower which can store anything. That Ling Tian guy really is forgetful. Sam muttered as he waved the hand in which he was holding the crystal and said. As he waved the crystal, all the spirit stones and the feathers vanished. Come on, I will give you a ride. Yunwoo said as he bowed. So that Sam could hop on. Sam climbed on, stood there. Then Yunwoo cawed loudly as he flew out of the volcano and straight up into the air. It is already time for the sun to set. Then suddenly Yunwoo transformed into a large raven from its sun crow form and flew down towards the entrance of the forest. Generally, by this time no one would dare stay in the woods. So, nobody saw their arrival. As Yunwoo landed, Sam jumped to the ground and Yunwoo turned into the size of a normal raven and landed on Sam's shoulder. Then Sam walked towards his home along with Yunwoo with a smile on his face. He is very excited and anticipated for the future. This is the first time he felt happy since he came to this world. Sam is waking through the streets as he is returning to his house. He is quite curious because all the streets are pretty much empty and very few people can be seen on the street. But through his thought back of his mind, the raven on his shoulder is looking around excitedly without blinking his eyes. Sam, do you really live in this village? Yunwoo asked curiously. Yes, why? Sam replied. The houses here are all so small. Yunwoo said slowly. Don't worry, we won't be staying here for long. Sam said as he patted Yunwoo's head. He is quite happy today for the first time he came to this world. He can finally say goodbye to the helpless feeling of a weakling and choose the path to develop and finally leave this backward village. All Sam wanted right now was to go to his house and examine himself to understand his own strength perfectly. As Sam thought up to this point, he reached his home and opened the door. Inside he saw the guests, who are sitting in the living room and all of them looking at various papers. One glance and Sam knew it that they were the designs of various attires he made previously. By the scene in front of him, Sam involuntarily frowned. And in middle of them were huge chunks of meat which are obviously barbecued. This meat is none other than the meat from the bull he killed. Are they really nobles from the city? It is one thing for them to stay here shamelessly, but to think that they won't have any shame to open his workroom and comfortably look through all his designs. How thick is their skin exactly? Sam thought inside his head. Suddenly all four people inside the room noticed the new presence and looked towards the door. When they saw Sam and noticed his expression, they immediately knew what he was thinking. So, they immediately avoided his gaze. Particularly Paul immediately soaked in his own sweat as he was afraid Sam's temper will raise again and beat him up. After all, he is not Sam's match despite him having the superior cultivation level. But his worries were unfounded. Then everyone noticed the black raven on Sam's shoulder and Philip asked to break the silence. Sam, why did you bring a raven with you? It is my new friend, Yunwoo. Sam said with a normal tone. The usual coldness was nowhere to be seen. Everyone felt a bit bewildered. Sam didn't even see them as friends even when Philip helped him to get out of the pinch from the village head. But now he went outside this morning and brought back a big black raven and saying it is new friend. So, they were little lost. Bro, on what standards do you usually make friends? This is the thought on their minds. Well, except for one person. I want to make a deal with you. Haley spoke slowly in a low voice from the side. Everyone came out of their wandering thoughts and looked at her, including Sam. Her three teammates were a bit surprised. Because, this is not how she usually talks. The ice goddess Haley and her cold and haughty manner are famous all around the Starwood City. Now hearing her polite tone, everyone felt like they were dreaming. But Philip was smiling from other side with an amused expression as he looked at both Sam and Haley. What do you want? Sam asked in an equally polite tone. This time even Philip felt a little surprised. All the three boys only have one thought. What happened to all the cold persons today? Why did they become so polite all of a sudden? But Sam didn't care what they thought. His personality is akin to a mirror. Whatever the other people offers reflects it back in full scale. Listening to his tone, Haley relaxed as she was afraid he would react just like he did yesterday. Then she took a deep breath and continued. I want you to make me some dresses. Haley said slowly. Listening to this, all her teammates felt that they heard it wrong. Because, based on her wealth and status, she could get as many dresses and as many types as she wants. But they were bewildered to take her such a polite approach and request a person like that. But they didn't know what thoughts that Haley has. Haley has seen Freya's dresses she got from Sam from before. Every dress is like an artwork, and since they were specifically made for Freya, they clearly matched her very well. She and Freya are from the same academy and are of same age, and they have an obvious rivalry that is known to all the Starwood City. Now, after seeing the elegant and beautiful dresses Freya wearing, she felt that she lost in comparison. She tried to find out where Freya got these dresses, but all the efforts are in vain. But her teammates would never guess that. Because in their hearts Haley is an ice goddess, who is aloof to all the mortal thoughts. Who would guess that the goddess in their thoughts is like every other young maiden? That is why she felt a little anxious, since no one can give the dresses she wants other than Sam. But the reply she got disappointed her a bit. "I can't do that now," Sam replied. The other guys all felt shocked again. Damn, this guy really knows how to play hard to get. The goddess is clearly requesting politely, and he didn't even hesitate to reject. "Why?" Haley asked with frustration. "Why is this guy so hard to please? I am already asking politely. Damn it, many scions in the city are trying so hard to please, and he is not even hesitating to reject me." She inwardly thought as she felt her pride for her beauty shattering. "Right now, my shop is not in a condition for creating clothes, as I lost all the instruments when Oliver thrashed the store. Moreover, I don't have enough raw materials. So, I can't do it," Sam replied with the same polite tone. Hearing this, Haley felt a little better yet disappointed. She clearly felt better since he doesn't reject her for any reason but circumstances, and disappointed because she can't get the dresses. Looking at her disappointed expression, Sam continued, "I will be opening my shop in the Starwood City. Since you asked me now, I will only create clothes for you first. But the number of dresses will be same as Miss Freya, that is a total of 10 dresses, and will be done in same quality." Listening to this, Haley's eyes sparkled. Then Sam continued, "But you have to keep the prices a secret, because I will be charging new prices as I am changing my products a bit," Sam said. Haley immediately agreed. "I will be in my workroom as I have something to do. So, please don't disturb me till morning," Sam said as took 2 huge pieces of barbecued meat chunks in middle of the team and went towards his workroom. He didn't really feel any shame to grab the meat as it came from the bull he killed. "This meat really tastes," Sam thought as he took a bite and entered his workroom. After Sam left, all 3 guys in the room were about to ask something. But Haley beat them to it. "Don't you dare talk about what happened now, get out of your mouth," she said coldly as she sat down and continues eating. Everyone just shook their heads, and they also continued eating. Inside the workroom, Sam sat down as he started eating. And Yunwoo also started eating other piece of meat. Suddenly, Yunwoo asked, "Sam, who are they?" "They are a few people from the city who I made a deal with," Sam replied slowly. "Oh," Yunwoo replied as he continued munching on the meat. After they had their fill, Sam stood up and started searching for something, and after an intense search in all the mess, he finally found a big piece of black cloth. And he slowly walked towards a wooden mannequin which the previous Sam had it made. He picked the mannequin and placed it properly before searching for other tools. All this time Yunwoo is looking at his actions curiously. Sam finally got all the tools he wanted. He placed the black cloth on the only intact table and took a few pieces of the ribbon strips which are the measurements of himself and started marking the black cloth. Looking at him work rapidly, Yunwoo asked a little curiously, "Sam, what are you doing?" "I am making an overcoat for myself," Sam said without stopping. "What is a coat?" Yunwoo continued. How should I explain? It is an outer garment which is worn on top of the clothes. You will see it in a bit," Sam said with a smile. He clearly understood how curious Yunwoo is. Even though he doesn't know how old Yunwoo is, he clearly understood his brain as of a little kid. Every in this world is new to Yunwoo. Sam finished his markings as he took a scissors and started cutting. All this while Yunwoo asked various questions and Sam answered them patiently with a smile on his face. But the people outside clearly didn't what is going on inside. All they could hear is a raven cawing non-stop while a person is speaking. After some time, they completely disregarded it as they don't have guts to go and see. But Haley can't control her curiosity and walked towards the workroom and slowly opened the door. The scene in front of her made her shocked. Because the cold and aloof person who is always on his temper is now smiling while working on the cloth. The smile on the handsome young man's face made her heart skip a beat. His smile is so warm and looked like a radiant sun in the dawn as he is explaining each and everything he is doing to the raven as if he is explaining it to a child, and raven is nodding and cawing at him like it understood. The scene looked so mesmerizing as she stared at the handsome young man working precisely and elegantly without batting an eyelid. Haley, suddenly a slow whisper was heard in her ears and she saw Philip standing near her with a smile. "Is he looking good?" Philip asked with a meaningful smile. He clearly saw her mesmerized gaze and now teasing. Hearing him say that, Haley really felt extremely embarrassed and looked down while her face became red. Looking at her, Philip's smile became a grin. As she saw the grin, Haley felt even more embarrassed and stomped the ground. As the sound came, Sam looked towards the door and his gentle smile immediately gone and a deep displeased frown occupied his face. Both Philip and Haley felt a bit awkward and looked at each other. "I remember saying not to disturb me," Sam said. His tone is full of displeasure. "Ha ha ha, Sam, we just wanted to take a look at what you are working." Philip directly ignored what Sam said and made his way into room with a shameless smile, and Haley slowly followed inside with an embarrassed look. Clearly, she also felt curious and wanted. Few knowing that it is impossible to get them out because of Philip's shameless nature, he completely ignored them and then again started working by himself. This time Yunwoo didn't make a single sound as it just looked at the two intruders with displeasure. He is obviously pissed as he was having a pleasant conversation with Sam and it is clearly interrupted. Both Philip and Haley involuntarily shuddered as they felt the gaze of Yunwoo. They don't know why they felt a sense of crisis from the raven. Sam finally cut the pieces and grabbed a needle and a black thread roll as he started stitching. Haley looked at him in daze again. This time even Philip felt a bit stumped. Yunwoo is as usual curious. Sam right now is not a cold arrogant man, not a strong fighter with a great combat prowess. Right now, he is an expert tailor. His hands are moving with such dexterity that they felt like flowing water. His actions are graceful yet precise and most importantly fast. Within an hour they saw a piece of garment in Sam's hands, but all three other characters other Sam in the room clearly can't understand what it is. It looked like a cloak and a long robe at same time. But they clearly know it is not. Sam took the overcoat he made to the mannequin and put the coat on it. It is a black overcoat with a hood. Sam left the room and came back with a large bunch of feathers in his hands. Looking at him go to his bedroom and coming back with black feathers, the other two guys also felt puzzled and followed him into the workroom. Sam put down the feathers and picked one up and put it on the coat. He slowly started sewing the feather onto the coat surface. After sewing one feather, he picked another feather and did the same. Since he had a lot of feathers, he sewed them densely and sewed in an orderly pattern. Time slowly passed by as he sewed one after the other. All the people looked at Sam working with shock. They could clearly see his strong concentration and care as he was afraid he would damage a feather even a little. Night slowly passed as dawn approached. Finally, by the time sun rose, Sam sewed the final feather and the coat is completed. By the time his coat is finished, it did not feel like the feathers are sewed on it, rather it looked like a feather-like pattern naturally formed on the cloth itself. Sam took the finished coat and wore it. He felt quite satisfied as he looked at the coat. He felt rather worried as he wasn't certain that the previous Sam's skills are still with the body. But his worries are rather unfounded. All the other people in the room looked at the coat with astonishment. Never saw this type of cloth. Its length is up to knees and it looked quite stylish. While Yunwoo is cheerfully flapping his wings as it felt even closer to Sam with the familiar aura from the feathers. Only then did the others came out of daze. Then finally Haley couldn't help but say, "Incredible." She felt like Sam's way of making the coat so great. If she hadn't seen it herself, she wouldn't believe that the coat is made of feathers. She took a deep breath and said, "Mr. Sam, I would like to change my request." Haley said. Then only Sam realized these shameless people are with him. He felt like he would be in trouble from Haley's expression. He asked cautiously, "What does Ms. Haley want? Can you make me a formal gown with feathers like this?" She asked him with an anticipating gaze. Looking at her expression, all her teammates smiled wryly. Where is the aloof goddess? She is obviously a fangirl. After some thinking, Sam agreed with some reluctance. Sure, but I will only do one, and only this will have a discount. Next one will be of high price. All right, it is a deal. She nodded and left the room with her teammates in excitement. Sam came out of the room and said, I will go hunting after some time. We can leave the city tomorrow. Can we join for the hunt? Philip asked immediately. For visiting? Sure. Sam agreed, as he didn't want to hear another shameless excuse to tag along, and continued saying, Let me prepare for some time. Sam left to his bedroom to examine himself after the breakthrough. Sam entered his bedroom and sat down cross-legged on the floor after he removed his coat and put it on a hanger. Yinwu flew towards the coat and started looking at it curiously. Meanwhile, Sam closed his eyes and examined his transparent spiritual core. Inside the transparent core there are two new things appeared. Those are a golden light and a golden flame. They both just stayed still in center in the spiritual core. When tried to activate the spiritual energy in the core and tried it to spread to his whole body to cultivate, and didn't have any change. He felt quite puzzled and stopped. Sam thought for some time and tried in a different matter. He spread the spiritual energy, and after spreading the spiritual energy he tried to convert the golden flame. Then suddenly his spiritual energy converted into fire-type elemental spiritual energy. He felt like he is one with fire. Sam then withdrew the golden flame and tried to use the golden light. This is the light element. These elements came from the golden sun crow. So, they felt different than the normal elements. Sam thought something and immediately opened his eyes and looked at Yinwu. Yinwu is rubbing his head on the coat. Sam looked at him and smiled as he shook his head. Yinwu, I have something to ask you. Sam said. Yinwu immediately landed in front of Sam. What do you want to know? Yinwu asked. I now have both of your elements. The fire and the light element. But I have a doubt, how I should learn the spells. Should I learn like any orthodox mage, or do I have any other methods since I obtained the elements in a unique way? Sam asked. For visiting. Oh, you probably don't know this. Have you ever thought how the beasts use their elemental skills without doing any hand signs or incantations? Yinwu asked. No, Sam replied directly. Because the beast doesn't need do them, as they have elemental skills imprinted in themselves. For example, for a normal fireball spell or a pyroblast spell should require many incantations and hand signs. But I don't have to do it like that. I can just control the flame flow directly and fireball will appear. Let us go to the tower's second floor. I will demonstrate it to you. Yinwu said. Sam took out the crystal and then both of them disappeared into the tower as the crystal fell down on the bed. See carefully. Yinwu said to Sam as he changed into his original form and opened his mouth wide open, and fireball, which is in golden color, flew into the distance. After that Yinwu landed and turned towards Sam. Using the spells like that is called innate elemental manipulation. It is not only for beasts but also for humans as well. If they practice it over and over again until their bodies are long used to it and imprinted into his muscle memory, he can definitely do it. At least for the spells he practiced, he can perform innate elemental manipulation. But you don't have to do this, because you got it from my bloodline. So, you will also have the innate elemental manipulation like I have, and you can also perform other fire-type spells with the innate elemental manipulation as long as you know the principle behind the spell. Yinwu explained. Hearing that, Sam nodded in understanding. Sam slowly closed his eyes and started to conjure the fireball in his palm. Slowly, a golden fireball appeared in his palm and Sam threw it as it disappeared into horizon. Sam now understood how it works. Just when he was about to try again, Yinwu spoke. Sam, there are other abilities along with the innate elemental manipulation. First one is elemental fusion, and other as bloodline technique. Elemental fusion is like this: when one is fully able to comprehend the nature of an element, you can obtain elemental fusion. There are 3 levels of elemental fusion. In level 1 you can make all your skin one with the element. As Yinwu said, all his feathers and skin slowly turned into golden flame. Then Yinwu continued. In this stage you can have swift movements within a place filled with fire element, and spell casting may become easy. In second stage you can make one part of your body into an element at a time. Yunwu paused again and turned his wings into golden flames. When Sam covered his hands with spiritual energy and slowly put his hands into the flames, he felt a searing pain on his skin, but he was sure that Yunwu is controlling the temperature, but his mind is not on it. He is currently looked at the hand which is passed directly through the flame wings. Sam retracted his hands and Yunwu immediately retracted his elemental fusion form. Final fusion form is making your whole body one with your element. I am unable to do it. Sam, you can achieve fusion directly, but you have a huge advantage compared to others since the main condition to achieve fusion is to obtain high-level innate elemental manipulation. Yunwu paused and took a deep breath and continued. Sam, the bloodline technique is a forbidden art. You will also have it since we share the same bloodline. But you have to remember to use it as a last resort. How do I use it? Sam asked. Examine your blood, Yunwu said. Sam closed his eyes and started examining his blood with his spiritual sense. In his blood he found traces of golden blood flowing along with it. When he observed carefully, he found out that the golden blood is mixed perfectly with his own blood. The golden blood is the golden sun crow blood. You have to concentrate your spiritual sense on this blood and spread your flame-type energy along with the flow of your blood rapidly. The bloodline forbidden art will activate. If you activate it, you can fight an opponent many times stronger than you. But you have to pay a heavy price for it. Yunwu explained. Sam opened his eyes and looked at Yunwu before speaking. What about your light attribute? Do you know any healing spells? No, we don't have any healing spells. We use the light attribute for movement techniques. See this? Yunwu replied as his wings turned bright with golden light and he immediately disappeared and reappeared quite a distance away, and in the same way he came back. Humans can also use it, but pure light elemental mages don't have any attack spells, so they don't have much use for it. That is why they only focus on healing. Sam nodded in understanding. Sam slowly closed his eyes and tried copy Yunwu's movement technique and made his spiritual energy into light elemental spiritual energy and concentrated on his legs. Then suddenly moved. Just like that he also disappeared, but instead of stopping normally he fell down face first in a distance. Bah ha ha ha, Yunwu laughed as he followed Sam. Sam stood up with a gloomy expression and started practicing the movement technique again and again. Sam fell down many times over and over again, and he practiced the movement technique over the hours. In the outside world only an hour passed. Sam finally has some improvement in his movement technique. Then he and Yunwu got out of the dimension. Sam sat cross-legged as he took out a fire elemental spirit stone and started absorbing fire elemental spiritual energy. The fire spiritual energy entered his spiritual core and converged towards the golden flame in it. Then it turned into golden color from red color and finally started converting itself into normal spiritual energy, slowly filling his spiritual core. Slowly his fatigue got away. Even though he hasn't slept last night, he as a cultivator can go on for at least 2 to 3 days straight without sleep. After recovering, Sam slowly stood up and took the coat from the hanger and wore it. Then he slowly walked out of his room, and Yunwu, who already transformed into his raven form, is already following behind him as he landed on Sam's shoulder. Both of them entered living room where Philip and his teammates are already waiting. Shall we go? As soon as Sam entered, Philip said with a smile. Sam nodded and all 5 of them left the house and started walking towards the woods. After some time Sam spoke. I forgot something, you guys carry on and I will join you in a bit. Oh, do you want me to accompany you? Philip asked. No, it won't take long. Sam said. Then we will wait for you here. Philip said. Sam just nodded in acknowledgement and walked towards the village center and came back after a while. This time the only difference is, he has a ring with a small blue crystal on his right hand. Everyone didn't notice anything odd and all of them again walked towards the woods. After walking for a while, they entered the woods. They stopped in a field which has more open space and sat down to discuss the plans. How about going individually? We can hunt in the outskirts for a while and let's meet here at noon. Then we can go for something inside the woods. Sam said. No, how can that be done? After all, Sam, you have the lowest cultivation here. So, how can we rest easy if something untoward happened to you? Philip rejected immediately. I can handle it myself in the outskirts. Sam said with a frown. He wants to be alone. After all, he need to collect the silk moth nest and store them in his dimension. He doesn't want these people to know about it. That is why he is trying to go single. We will go by pairs. Haley and Paul, Sam and Marvin, and I will go alone since my cultivation level is highest. Philip said again. This time Haley frowned. She really doesn't like this Paul very much, but now Philip is suggesting them to team up. Seeing Haley's expression, Philip looked at her and signaled something with his eyes, and she remained silent. Seeing that nobody has any objections, Sam has no choice but to agree, and without saying another word he started walking in the direction where silk moth nest is present. Seeing this, Marvin also nodded to his teammates and quickly followed Sam. Looking at the man who dressed in black with a black raven on his shoulder walking without any intention of cooperating as a team, Marvin smiled wryly. You better explain yourself, Haley said to Philip. Nothing, I didn't really mean to make you and Paul a team. I just wanted Sam and Marvin to tag together, and if I don't make the teams like that, he won't believe me. So, don't take it to heart. Let's just wait here until noon. Nothing would be challenging to us anyway, Philip said as he sat down on the ground. Haley didn't reply and just turned her gaze towards the horizons. Paul had a disappointed expression. After all, who wouldn't want to have some lone time with a beauty? Meanwhile, Marvin is having a hard time. He clearly knew why Philip arranged them to be together. He is also an ordinary commoner, but his talent can be considered quite good. So, only few people dared look down upon him. Philip thought that Sam didn't like them because Paul has acted like a spoilt young master. That is the reason he sent Marvin and Sam together, so that they can work out some friendship, as both of them have similar statuses. But their plan can be considered quite a failure. Because from the start Sam didn't talk to Marvin, and Marvin didn't dare to start the conversation. Looking at Sam's expression, suddenly Sam turned towards Marvin and said while showing his pinky finger, I need to take a leak. Then he turned and disappeared into bushes without even waiting for the response. Marvin didn't get to speak and stood there blankly. He hesitated whether to follow or not, and finally decided against it and waited there patiently. Sam went into the bushes and rapidly ran towards the silk moth nest as Yunwoo followed him at same pace. After a few moments he finally encountered the silk moth nest and walked towards it. Oh Sam, these are heaven spirit silk moths. Yunwoo exclaimed in surprise as he saw the silk moths. I know, that is the reason we are here, Sam said, as he looked towards the queen moth, which is in the size of a normal eagle. Oh, you plan to breed them? That is not a bad idea. Since you have the divine dimension, they could be bred nicely. So, why the delay? Capture them, Yunwoo said with some excitement. Well, I don't know how, Sam said with an awkward expression. You don't know how? Yunwoo looked at him like an idiot. Then he continued, Sam, remember one thing. In the world of the magical beasts, in the same cultivation stages, the one with the higher grade bloodline is superior, and if both of them are of same cultivation stages, their strength makes them superior. Even though these heaven spirit silk moths are of a decent bloodline, they are a lot inferior compared to my bloodline. So, that naturally makes you superior to them as well. All you have to do is to activate your bloodline aura and just command them to enter the dimension. That is enough, Yunwoo said matter-of-factly. But Sam still felt a little worried. Even though both his and the queen moth's cultivation stages can be said to be same, there is a lot of disparity, as he just entered the acolyte stage and the queen moth is at peak of the level, to which means it can be considered as peak of acolyte stage. Even though he felt that it wouldn't work, he did as Yunwoo said. As soon as he released the bloodline aura, all the silk moths that are flying or lying on the branches fell down as they couldn't bear the pressure. Only Queen Moth turned towards Sam, but it also felt like all the blood in it is trembling. It started buzzing. Please Lord, have mercy. A female voice suddenly entered Sam's mind. He almost jumped up as looked around, and involuntarily his concentration disturbed as a huge pressure bore down from the bloodline and all the silk moths started spasming. Sam, stop, Yunwoo yelled. Then Sam suddenly stopped and looked at Yunwoo and the queen moth and finally understood to whom the voice belonged to. Then the female voice came back again. Lord, what do you want from this humble one? The queen moth asked. I want to make a deal with you, Sam said as looked at the queen. Queen didn't say anything as she looked him like that. It seemed to be confused. Sam continued. I want you to guys follow me. I know you don't have much combat prowess until you broke through the next stage. So, I will provide all the resources and ensure to make your family develop to new heights. In exchange I will take your silk from you and your family members. What do you think? Queen Moth didn't know what to say immediately. She doesn't know what bloodline the human has, but that bloodline is definitely far superior to hers. So, she doesn't have any reason to refuse. But what she doesn't understand is the human who is superior to her is making a deal rather than ordering her. That is the reason she felt something is not right. But suddenly a voice and aura similar to before interrupted her thought process. Answer now, Yunwu from the side coldly said in commanding tone as he released his bloodline aura. This humble one agrees, the queen said as it nodded her head vigorously, afraid that Yunwu will get angry. Sam nodded in acknowledgement and waved his hand which has the crystal ring put on and all the moths including the queen disappear. The Sam and Yunwu went back to Marvin. As soon as Marvin saw Sam he sighed in relief. He thought something happened to him. But then another thought came to his mind. What is he doing all this while? Marvin walked towards Sam and asked slowly. What happened to you, Sam? Is something wrong? If you hadn't come back in 2 more minutes, I would have called the team to search for you. Marvin asked. It is a big leak. Sam said indifferently. Marvin immediately choked as he heard Sam's reply. He just wanted to bang his head to the tree. Like hell, it is a big leak. If you just want to do something alone, just say so. Why such pathetic excuse? He inwardly thought. Now he clearly understood how Sam felt when they gave shameless excuse to stay in his house. They again started walking, but out of blue Sam asked a question. How did you guys come to the village? This question confused Marvin a bit, but he still replied. Of course, we came on horses. You don't expect to walk from the city, right? Where are the horses? Sam asked. They are at the inn. Marvin replied. Sam immediately stopped walking and looked at Marvin with a frown. How are you guys nobles? You are all shameless people. You clearly have place to stay at inn but stayed at my home to disturb me. Sam inwardly thought. If Marvin heard this, he will immediately curse him as Sam didn't even stay at home since yesterday and when he stayed, he minded his own business. Sam shook his head and started walking again. Suddenly he thought of something and said to Yunwu. Yunwu, find the blazing earth bulls in the forest and bring me 2 of them. I need steeds. Yunwu nodded its head and with a huge screeching it flew into the sky and disappeared into horizons. When Marvin heard the screech, he turned around abruptly only to see that Yunwu was flying away with great speed. He was clearly astonished. He didn't seem to hear what Sam said to Yunwu. Otherwise, who knew what type of expression he would have? Then they both started hunting slowly. At noon both of Sam and Marvin appeared at the meeting spot of the team. Sam can be seen carrying various carcasses but Marvin is walking with nothing in his hand. Because, he had a spatial treasure which is a few cubic meters wide. He offered Sam to help with his corpses. But met with only rejection. As they arrived at the camp, they can see the other 3 are waiting for them. When Sam saw all of them are empty-handed, he guessed they also have spatial treasures. Sam, you seem to have some big catch. Philip asked with a smile. So, Sam replied indifferently. Philip then looked at Marvin with some hope but he only saw the helpless look on Marvin's face. This time Philip also sighed. Okay then, after lunch we are going to hunt the Lord of the Forest. It is the very peak of the level to beasts. But I think we can handle it together. Philip said and all of them sat together to eat lunch. After eating and resting for a while all the 5 people went in search of their prey for today. Which is the Lord of the Forest, Scarlet Flame Panther. After searching woods for more than 2 hours they finally narrowed down the place where the Scarlet Flame Panther stayed. But when they found the place where the panther stayed, they felt absolutely shocked at the scene. In front of them there is blackish-colored panther lying in its own pool of blood and 2 panther cubs which are in blackish-red color lying in its 2 front paws. In distance from them there is a red-colored panther which is clearly injured severely, fighting on its last legs with a golden tiger. All the people clearly understood the scenario. The Black Panther is a Windfang Panther which is clearly the mate of the Scarlet Flame Panther. The tiger, which is a gold blood tiger, sneaked attack on the panther couple when the black panther is about to deliver its cubs. Now the panther couple is clearly at a disadvantage. Even though all the three beasts are at same cultivation level, that is the late stage of the level 2, the panther couple is definitely going to die because of the sneak attack. When Philip and his teammates saw this scene, their eyes gleamed with delight. Even if Tiger won the fight, it will definitely be exhausted, then they could make a move and they will get 3 corpses of late stage level 2 beasts and also 2 panther cubs. They can make a fortune. All of them except one person are happy by that outcome. That one person is obviously Sam. When all of them are seeing the profit, he is seeing the eyes of the black panther, which is groaning in pain helplessly as the panther looked at her mate and her kids. All Sam could see is love of the mother who is helpless. The black panther is licking the young cubs who didn't even open their eyes fully but involuntarily shuddering due to the fluctuations from the fight of 2 beasts. The mother panther is slowly licking and groaning to comfort the cubs. Nobody present can understand her groans except the 2 beasts and Sam. "Don't worry kids, Mother is here. Mother won't let anything happen to you. Don't worry." The panther is still comforting as slowly comforted its kids. Sam's eyes turned red as he involuntarily shuddered. He is an orphan in both his lives. Even though he is cold and arrogant deep inside, he always wanted for that motherly love. He always wanted to have someone who he can call mother and lean on her shoulders to tell her all his burdens. But he never got that. Seeing the helpless mother panther, Sam couldn't control himself and stepped forward. As Sam took a step forward, Philip blocked him and said hurriedly, "Sam, time is not right yet. Just wait a few more minutes and we can attack." Sam immediately became furious as he saw Philip blocked him. He looked at Philip with his eyes red and involuntarily released his aura and spiritual energy. His Golden Sun Crow bloodline aura is also activated and mixed with killing intent as he stared at Philip with his red eyes. Philip involuntarily stepped back. Only one thought remained in his mind. He broke through. He clearly remembered that Sam is only at peak of initiation 2 days ago and his physical strength is extraordinary, that he could kill Paul, who is at the 2nd stage Acolyte Mage, anytime he wanted without even giving any chance to use his elemental spells. Now that he is at Acolyte stage, Philip couldn't even imagine how powerful he became. Even he himself at 4th stage Acolyte Mage felt extremely fearful by the dangerous aura emanating from Sam. Sam didn't even bother with him and leapt towards the gold tiger directly and punched it with all his might at its abdomen and sent it flying. Scarlet Flame Panther felt surprised and looked at Sam, and seeing that Sam has no malice, he just nodded and turned towards the golden blood tiger. The gold blood tiger is already exhausted a bit as he fought with the Scarlet Flame Panther. And when the tiger saw Sam, its instincts told to not to fight him at all. This is the reaction from the aura directed towards it from the Golden Sun Crow bloodline. Since Sam has no malice towards him, the Scarlet Flame Panther didn't feel much pressure. But it fell to the ground and fell unconscious. It is in its last breath. It looked at Sam with a pleading gaze and roared. Nobody understood what it said, only Sam understood. "Save them," that is what the Scarlet Flame Panther said before it died. Looking at its corpse, the Black Panther roared in sorrow, making Sam even more enraged. He directly leapt towards the golden tiger again and kicked it with all his might. Crack! The tiger flew again with cracking sound as Sam's kick broke few bones of the tiger. Then the tiger roared furiously with a burst of killing intent and launched an attack towards Sam and wanted to bite his neck. Sam sidestepped and threw a punch towards its neck. But this time a ding came as he felt like he hit metal. Sam involuntarily gave a low groan and pain as he saw the tiger. Then he remembered something he learnt from the bestiary. The gold blood tiger is a metal elemental beast. He was able to break the few bones because he caught the tiger off guard. But now it is fully prepared. Then he looked the tiger coldly and both the man and the tiger started exchanging blows. Meanwhile, Philip and his teammates finally came to their senses. "Shall we help him?" Marvin asked as he saw Sam nervously. He is shocked at Sam's strength. Even though the gold blood tiger is injured and exhausted, its combat prowess should still be at 5th stage of Acolyte, and Sam is directly trading blows with his brute strength at his 1st stage Acolyte level. He is now afraid of Sam even more. "No, don't even think about it." Philip immediately, his eyes still staring at the scene. Why, big bro? If we don't, he will take all the loot if he wins. Paul said, clearly displeased. Philip immediately slapped him. You clearly deserve that slap. Haley said as she looked at Paul with unhidden disdain and again turned back towards the fight. She felt heart beating rapidly. She is the topmost genius of the city with her cultivation base at third stage acolyte. But her pride took a bug hit when she saw Sam fighting. She even doubted her genius title. Beside her, Paul's voice can be heard. Why, big bro? He clearly didn't understand why Philip hit him when he stated obvious. Because, we will die in hands of him if we interfere. Haley answered as she pointed at Sam. Paul was shocked by the answer and turned towards Philip for confirmation. Philip nodded his head as sweat dripped from his forehead. He clearly felt when Sam looked at him earlier. If any of them interfered in the fight, they will definitely die in Sam's hands. As he thought up to this, something happened in the battlefield. One of the tiger claws managed to hit Sam on his chest where his black coat didn't cover, creating a claw scar as blood dripped. The wound was not deep, but Sam, who clearly felt a bit tired, already felt his strength drop, and he immediately looked at the tiger coldly. He leapt back and looked towards the tiger as he slowly extended his hand and pointed towards it, his palm wide open. Then he suddenly gathered all the spiritual energy inside his body into his palm, which formed into a sphere. But a thing which even surprised him happened. The spiritual energy around him also started gathering into his palm. But he didn't think much about it in between the fight. Philip and the teammates were quite puzzled by his action. They didn't understand why Sam is gathering all the spiritual energy into his palm. Even the golden blood tiger felt a little puzzled and looked at Sam with confusion. Then suddenly the sphere of spiritual energy, which is in the size of 4 times the basketball, turned into a concentrated ball of golden fire. Everyone was dumbstruck as they didn't even know what happened. He is a warrior mage. This thought stuck Philip and his teammates' minds. Then before they come out of their daze, Sam shot the fireball right at the gold-blooded tiger. The tiger felt the danger from the fireball and tried to turn tail and run. But it was too late as the fireball struck it in full force. Then the tiger roared in misery as it felt all its flesh burning and blood evaporating. After some time, all the flesh burned to ashes. The only thing left from the tiger is its skeletal remains. Watching this scene, all 4 members felt their hair standing on their necks. They involuntarily looked at Sam and felt themselves shivering in fear. All their backs are soaked in sweat. Then suddenly Sam walked towards the mother panther and slowly patted her head and said, "I will take care of them." The black panther roared and licked Sam's face with tears in its eyes. "Thank you." Sam heard this voice in his head. All the 4 teammates also felt the gratitude of the mother panther and guilt rose in their hearts. If they directly fought the panther and obtained the cubs, then they don't need to feel like it. Because that is the law of jungle. But taking the cubs from the mother panther in her helpless situation is really a bit overboard. As they were thinking, Sam immediately collapsed to the ground in exhaustion. Sam just sat on the ground and looked towards Philip and his teammates coldly. "Don't worry. We don't have any ideas," Philip said, seeing Sam's expression. Then only Sam relaxed. Then all of them suddenly heard a loud screech, and when they saw towards the direction, they saw a black light flashing, and Yunwu appeared in front of Sam and flew in front of him, cautiously looking at Philip and his teammates. He felt Sam's aura when he unleashed the final attack and thought he was in danger. Then he immediately flew over here. "Relax, Yunwu, they are not enemies," Sam said, and Yunwu looked at the surroundings and understood the gist of the situation. But both Sam and Yunwu didn't notice the shock in faces of Philip and his teammates. They felt the amount of pressure from Yunwu as same as Sam, and they shivered. Thank God we don't have any ideas on making a move. As they thought up to this point, they involuntarily shivered again. This raven is not ordinary at all. Then all of a sudden, the ground trembled. They saw 2 middle stage level 2 blazing earth bulls running towards them. Just when Philip and others are getting ready for a battle, they heard Sam saying, "They are not enemies." They looked at him puzzlement. Then they saw the 2 bulls stop in front of Yunwu and bowed their heads. They felt shocked. Then even more shocking scene occurred. As Yunwu said something to the bulls, they bowed towards Sam in a show of respect. Then Sam slowly stood up and said to the bulls, "Dig a hole which will fit those 2. Sam said as he pointed towards the two panthers. Then looked at the mother panther and took the cubs in his both hands and said in low voice, "I will take care of them." Then the mother panther nodded in gratitude and let out its last breath and closed her eyes. After some time the bulls dug hole large enough to put the both panthers and slowly dragged the two panthers and placed them in the hole and started burying them. Philip and his teammates looked at this from the side and said nothing. Only Paul has an expression of unwillingness. After the bulls were done, Sam walked towards the tiger's skeletal remains and touched it. They were metallic bones. They were completely made of pure metal. He kept the remains on the back of one of the bulls and slowly walked towards Philip and said, "I will compensate for your loss," he said, and without waiting for their reply he walked towards the village with one raven and two bulls following him. Philip and his teammates stared at his back in daze for some time and finally hurried to follow him. As they walked, sun was already setting slowly and sky turned dim.